Hey, hi everyone. Before I start, I would like to thank ADPList for putting together such awesome BeMore festival and having me as one of the speakers, along with such a nice lineup. Uh, Let me talk about me a little bit. Hi, I'm Riya Thosar. I lead UX for CX Intelligence and Incubation at SAP. Coming from multidisciplinary design background and then settling into user-centered design for over 2 decades, I have always looked for opportunities to balance art and science of design while building meaningful product experiences. And being into design leadership and management role for a long time, it gave me an opportunity to build and mentor global multidisciplinary design teams at different scales. So these learnings are really helpful when it came to collaborating across different LOBs and mentoring designers. The role I played taught me importance of empathy in our day-to-day interactions and everyday actions that we perform to be successful as an individual and as well as a team. And while I enjoy my day-to-day design work, I'm also passionate about exploring how I can take design to the next level and help solve problems around us at a community level. And that led me to work with few non-profit organizations where I use design as a tool for community uplifting. And that's how I joined ADP List in 2021 as a mentor. So, in today's session, I would like to give you all a perspective on how we can go beyond our jobs as a designer and lead with our superpowers as a designers that we have, and why that really matters in the current challenging times. So, we all learned the basics of user centered design. And There is a one principle that we all learned. So, can you tell me what is that one principle that we start with in user centered design? Maybe you can quickly type in the chat and tell me what do you think. Bingo. So, you guys are perfect. I'm so glad you guessed it correct. So yeah, it's empathy. Everything it's about empathy. When we start with user-centered design, it's all about the users that we think about, right? And think about their pain points. But while we focusing on users and customer, we might easily forget about forget about to follow the same principle of being empathetic with our team members we work with. And that is something includes designers, the fellow designers that we work with, the cross functional team members like the product management team or engineering team, or maybe LOBs that we work with, and the stakeholders, the people who are responsible for taking decisions or defining the vision. Now, being part of a bigger ecosystem that is called society. So we talked about team. Now that how you can actually expand this to the bigger ecosystem. So we being part of that bigger ecosystem, uh, we have to think about how can we actually contribute to the betterment of our society by using empathy as a tool and going beyond our day-to-day job. And I think this is more important, more now since the last 3 years whatever we all have experienced. I think empathy is really important in everything that we do. Now we are talking about empathy, how it really helps us. So it helps us in terms of appreciating people's emotion and their physical needs, understand the insights or gain insights into the way people see, understand, and interact with the world around us, around them. Realize how lives are impacted within the context of being investigated, find out what people really mean rather than what they say. So there are many things which you actually just by understand by observing users or people around you. Empathetic research is basically inherently subjective and is connected to the motivations and thoughts rather than facts. So there are three distinct aspects of empathy which we can look into. First is cognitive empathy, where you actually understand. what another person is feeling and thinking. Second is emotional empathy, and third is compassion. So let's look at what's the difference between three of them and how it really works in the whole context that we work in as a UX designer. So, cognitive empathy is something, as we said, like understanding what another person is feeling and might be thinking. So, it's about taking another person's perspective, imagining what it is like in another person's shoes, understanding someone's feeling. And cognitive empathy does not really involve any feeling. It simply means you recognize that person is experiencing, let's see, physical pain or any frustration. So you can see the situation from their perspective in a logical or rational way. But it has no effect on your own feelings or emotions. So these techniques, many times we have used this in the user research. When you observe things, you try to understand why user is saying what user is saying, and what's the reason behind that. So you try to analyze that. So this technique is used a lot in ethnographic study, user research, user interviews. So cognitive empathy includes the mental process of acquiring and understanding through thoughts, experience, and senses. It includes processes like knowledge, memory, judgment, reasoning, and decision making. So, this is about cognitive empathy. Now, let's look at what exactly emotional empathy means. So, emotional empathy is something sharing the feeling with another person's feeling and how they feel. So, for instance, finding a common ground and relating to your colleagues' feeling and discouragement because you have been in a similar situation and have felt the same thing. Emotional empathy helps you build a deeper connection between people, and this is something I personally felt is very critical when you actually collaborate with the cross functional teams. You work with your customers, or even you work with stakeholders. So, sharing an emotional experience, feeling distress in response to someone's pain, experiencing a willingness to help someone. So, emotional empathy is when you actually feel the other person's emotions with them. Like if there are feelings like frustration because there is a design or there is a product features which you all work together and you it's time to release, but for some reason it get pushed back because it didn't get approval. Imagine you can relate to each other's feeling because everyone has put in so much effort, but of course there is a reason behind why maybe it got pushed back, but that time you can relate to each other's feeling. That this is typically happens, as I said, like it's more relatable. Emotional empathy is when you actually work with each other. You can relate emotionally to your team members, you are involved, maybe you're working together with them, and also the same time you have a common topics which you are passionate about. So that's where you get emotionally involved and feel more connected with the other person or the topic that you are working on. Now talking about compassion and compassionate empathy, so it's basically the combination of cognitive and emotional empathy, where for example it leads you into the result. So for instance, you notice challenges around you in your community, and this is something I guess we all faced last 3 years, right? We all face the same feeling, and you want to change something or you want to do something about it. So you are empathetic about what's happening around you, people facing certain issues, and then you really want to do something about it. So you are taking an action on that. So that's basically a compassionate feeling. Now how really it helps thinking about all these three aspects. So it's basically you have to mix and match the part of these three different areas. As I said, like certain part cognitive empathy helps you more on the research perspective. The emotional part really helps you connect with your team better, your stakeholders better. The compassionate part is basically is more motivation for you to take some action to make changes for better. Now talking about we as a designer, what it really means to lead with empathy. What is it that we can really do? So for us, empathy is a primary skill that we need to adopt as a user centered designer or as a UX designer. So what are the things we actually can we can utilize that we have? So I call it as a superpowers that we have. Soft skill was actually really highlighted in terms of the primary skill that everyone needs to acquire. Then, talking about the collaboration, orchestrating the communication between the different groups, for example, product management, engineering, right? The research team. In some cases, we also have user technical writers, right? So, collaborating with all of them, and we being standing in the center of all these groups, I think we as in designers always have a visibility to these functions, and we can definitely orchestrate some of these conversations much better. Now, again, we being more focused, and when I say we, I'm always referring to we as a designer. So we being focused on more user perspective, we always want to make sure we bring in that user perspective. We make sure like it's whatever we talk about, we focus on when the problems we are solving is more in context of user, in context of their needs and their pain points. And at the same time, when we are bringing this user's perspective, as I said, like we are standing in the center of business, technology, and basically users. So it's also important to think about what is the business challenge, right, that we want to focus on. How business is going to get benefited if we build correct solution, or we build solution that is going to solve problem for our users. What's business benefit? What is the strategy that we are going to apply, and how can we collaborate with business to do that, to achieve that goal? So it's equally important to focus on the business aspects also, while we are focusing on users. So alignment with the business is definitely important. And then the third part is visualization. I think I personally feel that's our actually superpower, because uh, designers can visualize like what technology can actually help us achieve, and that's the biggest benefit. We can visualize what technology can do, what big business can actually achieve by simply drawing on a whiteboards, and that can actually give technology people or development people as well as business people a better idea, like what our thoughts are actually looks like. So I think visualization is one of the superpower that we have and that we should use to visualize the bigger picture and collaborate with everyone. Now, talking about being empathetic, we talked about being empathetic with our team members, right? When we are collaborating. And I also talked about bringing the perspective like, okay, I focus on the users, but at the same time, I also need to focus on the business. So how do you balance these both the things? So when I say being empathetic with users as well as stakeholder, what it means is, of course, by education, we are trained to focus on users pain points, how we can make them more productive, what are their challenges, what the background they are coming from. So we will for sure going to take care of that when we start with the process of ideation and defining the problem statement. But while we do that, we also need to really focus on being empathetic with our stakeholders, because this is a very common example, and I have heard this so many times. Like we have a fight with product management, or we have a fight with technology because they are pushing back on the designs that we build. So it's very important to understand why they are pushing back. What is the reason? Because when you think at a larger context, everyone is working towards same goal. No one wants to fail the product, right? Everyone wants to achieve success as a team together or as a product together. So what is it that is making them push back on certain designs? So I think it is very important to understand those aspects and think about it. So that can only happen when you actually have that conversation with your cross functional teams or your stakeholders. So for example, if you are talking to someone from the product management, you show them some design and they are pushing back on certain options that you have created. It's important to know why. So either there is a technical aspect that you need to consider, maybe it's not feasible, or is it expensive, or is it something it's not the high priority right now, because that's not like must have feature. So what is the reason? There is always a reason behind that, so try to understand that reason. There are a lot of aspects which product management really need to tackle, um, in terms of deadlines, budgets. They have so much pressure from that perspective as well. So the way we are empathetic with users, right, we understand their background, their role, their context in terms of what are the tasks they have to perform. I would say use the same logic and apply it to your stakeholders, and that will make things so much easier for you. And yeah, so this is something I just want to give you one perspective about, like how you can actually collaborate better and bring in more empathy when you're collaborating internally with your own product teams and cross functional teams. So, and of course, while doing that, again, I always say, like, leadership doesn't come with only titles. No matter at what level you are, it's all about bringing everyone together. So just look for these opportunities when you are collaborating, when you are building something more meaningful. Now we also talked about like how empathy can play a critical role in solving some of the issues in our society. So while we faced last 3 years, there were so many challenges. I think 2020 pandemic shattered everyone. But I guess I would say one best thing has happened is actually everyone got united. Everyone started helping each other. So there is always something good about something bad is happening. So look at the sunny side of it. There are so many challenges which I personally feel we as a designer, there are so many skills that we can use to help some of these issues, right, in our society. So for example, what design can offer for betterment of society, and this is again coming from my own experience, how I use some of the design skills to help people in my community or community around me. So, first of all, critical thinking. We have that skill. We develop that skill as a design professional. So, critical thinking and creative problem solving. And this is something I feel we have a privilege to extend that skill, identifying the issues around us, and basically navigating through that issue and trying to help other people solve those issues by building meaningful solutions. So again, uh, design thinking is one of the framework which I have been personally using as a tool to identify a lot of issues around me and bringing people together. Bringing, I particularly work with a lot of teenagers, high school kids, to who are volunteering and coming up with a lot of projects to serve community. So that's one of the tool which I have used personally. Empathy and human centric approach. So this is something, as I said, like we are trained to be more empathetic towards users, towards now, as I said, like we should be empathetic more towards our team members also. So empathy is something we start with when we design something. So that approach is, I think, is the primary need for any human centric approach or any problem you are trying to solve. So bringing that human centric approach, empathy into the picture. And then third part is like designing social design. So basically applying general design principles to our society related needs. and designing the way basically it will help you address the social issues and ultimately create a sustainable society. So these are some of the areas, or these are some of the skills that we can focus on and we can actually utilize to um, actually help community as well as our team. I came across this very interesting visualization which I thought of sharing with you, which explains like how social design, what is it, like why we have to do it. Because basically with all the global warming, the pandemic that we faced, there were so many layoffs happening, people were going out of business, so small business suffered a lot. With so many challenges, definitely we need to come up with solutions which are more sustainable. We need to come up with the processes which are more sustainable. So it helps you focus more on like how can we build a sustainable world. Then talking about like how we can do, so there are multiple ways how you can do. Actually we can collaborate with multiple organizations. Now I am part of a few non-profit organization where we collaborate with the different organizations to implement some of the project that we come up with. So you have to collaborate with people, organizations who can help you implement those ideas or those projects in the real life scenarios. Then basically the you have to define the process and basically design something which has a purpose, which has a cause that you can actually lead with. Now, what are the different ways you can achieve what you want to do, right? So, there are different methods, and of course, these methods are used at a different level. So, many of you are aware of it as a designer. You might have used it in many of the scenarios, but it depends on what are you trying to solve, what are you trying to do. So these are few examples of the methods that can be used in terms of building those meaningful experiences or solving some of the problems for community uplifting. So ethnographic study, where you actually can study in detail about the context of the users or the target audience you're focusing on, understanding everything, the background, their context, their needs, how their day looks like, right? Observing all these things can really help you give you a lot of insights about that demographics. Then engaging with extreme users, so making sure like of course you test the products with the audience which are new users, but at the same time you also involve user which are the advanced users, right, which are using the products at a expert level. So depends, again as I said, it depends on what are you trying to solve, what are you working with, what type of project you are working with. You can utilize some of these methods during your design process. Talking about three whys, right, like what, how and why. So basically making sure you have all these answers. What are you trying to solve, how are you going to solve it, and why do you really want to solve it, what is the impact that is bringing in. Then talking about five why. So why is something always give you the it helps you reaches to the bottom of the need, like what, why you are doing what you are doing is extremely important. um, Body storming, journey mapping, focus group, these are some of the things which at the different levels you can utilize. Mind mapping. So particularly the way I have used some of these techniques is, again as I said, like I have used the design thinking framework while coming up with some of the projects that help basically solve issues in our society, or even in the context where I'm working with my product team. So I have basically tried and combining some of these techniques during that design thinking process. And then the result of it is basically it helped me collaborate better, bring everyone together, and engage with all the stakeholders while go through that process of approvals or being on the same page faster than otherwise it will take, the way it will be slow. So I think some of these metal methods definitely can help. And you can try it out and let me know how it goes. I will definitely share my contact details at the end, but the summary of it is basically be the change that you wish to see in the world. This is one of my favorite quote, and ADP list is one of the best example I can say. I guess you have to start changing something if something is bothering you, so be that change. Now, there is a question which I would love to hear from you guys, and there is a poll. So let's look at the poll. I would love to see your response to that. And I'm guessing Vicky, who's the host, is doing the poll for me. Okay, so I'm not sure about how this is happening on the poll side, but give me a second. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so I would love to see your response to this. So, meanwhile, I see the question, and of course, let me catch up with all the questions. But I see the first one from Vivian, like, how does an IC fresher move up the leadership and management ladder? I would say it happens organically. So, as I said, like, don't wait for the title, just always try to perform to the next level, and that will lead you to the basically leadership ladder automatically. So I would say just collaborate, um, collaborate effectively, try to bridge the gap. I think that is what is going to lead you to the next level. Orchestrate, try to orchestrate. Don't think like this is not my job, why should I? Just try to get the go ahead and bring everyone together and bridge those gaps. I'm not sure how I can see the poll result here, but I would love to see that if it's already closed. Okay, one very important and very interesting question. How do you deal with toxic behavior at work? So, see, this is one thing I personally practice is, of course, you can't fight every battle. So, you have to figure out the way how you deal with it. But at the same time, just keep the focus on what's important in the context of product development or design. Let's as a designer we have to keep the focus on what is important, what are we trying to achieve, and then have a conversation with the person, because sometimes you have to maybe have a conversations to let the other person know what you are thinking, and not necessarily we have to fight again always, right? There are multiple ways of communication, and that's where your soft skills are very important, like how do you deal with the situations. So I would say in some cases, if it is extreme, you have to figure out way. Um if one way is not, like maybe one person is not something you can have a conversation, find out another channels where you can communicate your thoughts, how you're feeling, and what why you are saying what you are saying, and how it's going to help everyone as a team. How would you communicate to the stakeholder that lacks empathy while being kind? um, it's a personality, I would say. See, it won't happen. Every human being will be empathetic. It is very rare, like you won't have empathy. But yes, of course, the way maybe they are thinking, um, maybe they are more focused. For example, if someone is from the product management, they are more crucial about how they can make the business successful, right? And that's where maybe they are not thinking, or maybe how fast they can bring in the product to the market. And that's where maybe they might not think about some of the aspects of user might be interested in, right? Or the features users are really looking forward to. So in such scenarios, the methods which I personally use is like using the user research outcome, maybe showing the qualitative quantitative both insights, share that with the stakeholders. And this is something I would always do it in a group, show everyone, like even the technology people, engineers, designers, and um, business people, product management people, bring them everyone together in the room, share all the results from the user study, user interviews, and show them what users are saying, because finally you're building a product which are going to be used by user. So this is the method usually works, when you show that okay, what users are saying about if the product already exists, this is what they are saying. It lacks usability, that means you have to focus on usability if you want to increase the adoption. So these are the methods you can use to convince another person, or even bring in that empathy into picture. Okay, how can we support the user pain points if the stakeholder wants to go a different direction? So I think this is the same question, similar question which I just answered. Use the methods of sharing insights you gain from user research, qualitative, quantitative, both. Share this insight, because nobody can actually deny the fact that you are building something that is going to be used by your users, that you are ignoring the facts, their pain points. So business can't afford that. So I think this is a very good, I would say, trick which works always. At least it worked for me, and that's where your communication skills are also very important. How do you communicate? Because we are not here to fight, right? We are here to work together towards one same goal. So as if you're convinced about this approach, then automatically your communication, your tone, everything changes. So just try to adopt that. How do we manage to involve stakeholder in the design process if they are clients to the organization? It's a very good question, and this is something we at SAP we practice this. So this is called co-creation. So you involve, and of course this happens with lot of approvals, customers willingness to be involved. So we co-create some of the product experiences with the customer. So what happens in that is they are more partners to us than customers. Of course they are customers, but they are equally emotionally, practically, they are engaged with us while we are building something. So what happens is psychologically they are actually involved with you. The way they interact with you, they come up with their own ideas, they try to ideate along with you. So this is one of the best model which I have personally experienced while working at SAP, that works really well. And also another is design thinking process, as I said, which the nature of design thinking framework is such that it brings everyone together, all the stakeholders together right from the beginning. How can we design for visual impaired or colorblind people not being okay? This is a very good question and very important one too. At SAP, we have a actually accessibility UX expert who and it's a whole new, I would say, whole new world altogether, because accessible design is an amazing topic. If anybody wants to get specialized into that, but there are completely defined methods which you can actually as a UX designer learn, like how do you really create components which are accessible. For example, we have a design system which are actually accessible, so it can be we have made sure like the color contrast is good enough so that even colorblind people can actually see the color difference. So there are a lot of these aspects which I would say all the organization should adopt. And yes, accessibility is it's a big area to focus on. And there are basic things, I would say, if you're not going fully with the accessible design, at least the color contrast, the font sizes, some of these things, there are few basics that we can easily follow without like going completely 100% accessible solution. Okay. Yeah, this is really good topic actually. And again, as I said, right, I would actually the way I would do this is, first of all, getting the complete information about these audiences, right? Like, who are you designing for? The issues they are now in this case, the patients that you are dealing with, right? Uh, Maybe first of all observing how their day looks like, right? How they deal with small things, right? These observations can really help. If you don't have access to the physical environment, maybe it's more virtual. In that scenario, maybe talking to them, right, like, or just having a conversations with them can help. That will lead you with a lot of insights which you capture from that. And then the future prototypes, I would say, you should do at every stage. Even some of the initial ideas, before you even go further, you should test the initial ideas when you actually start maybe sketching them out, right? Even try the paper prototypes without even you build them into Figma or any other tools that you might be using. um, this is it's a very common problem, right, in situations where we don't have budget and time. um, in such scenario, of course, like the secondary research is the primary tool that works best, because then you try to find information from the internet. If you already have some material which is documented from past but may not be the updated one, but still maybe you can try to gain some insights from that. I would do that. So yeah, these are the few techniques maybe you can do if you have no time and budget, but you still want to have the basis for your designs. Yeah, so we can just go with the last question. I see that how come we can overcome the mental block Yeah, it's a good one on research process. So I think the mental block is something basically leads you to why, what, and how, right? That question. So whenever you hit the roadblock, I think ask yourself, what are we trying to solve here? Where are we in the process of, maybe you are in the design thinking process, or you are in that whole design process. Where are we at, which part of process we are in, and what are we trying to solve at that stage, who are we solving this for. And I think that will give you those answers, and it will basically help you eliminate the areas that you really don't need to focus on, and it will help you clarify that mental block. Cool. I hope you guys found this helpful, and I could give you all different perspective. We being designer, how we can contribute to the product success as well as the success of our community. So happy to connect. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or happy to connect you with you on Instagram. Wherever you guys want to reach out to me. Thank you.